Welcome back, listeners, to another interesting episode on the BizBlend podcast with your host, Sana. And today, well, we are breaking down a topic that might raise a few eyebrows in boardrooms: intuition, but not the close your eyes and hope version. We are talking about tapping into subconscious brilliance, decoding what's already within you, and yes, even accessing the quantum field, but without slipping into the spiritual fluff. Listeners, our guest is Taryn Voget. She's a strategist, soul whisperer, and founder of the Genius Lab. With a background that bridges neuroscience, executive consulting, and shamanic healing, she's guided high growth founders and top leaders to breakthroughs most of us don't even think are possible. And listener, if you have ever wondered whether there is a smarter, more intuitive way to generate ideas, unlock flow, or maybe shift direction, this is your episode. So let's quickly dive in on today's episode on BizBlend with me, your host, Sana. So, Taryn, welcome to this show, and I'm really, really honored to have you here with us.
Thank you so much for having me. I can't wait to dive in. This is such a great topic.
Absolutely, absolutely. Terence, so to begin with, you talk about subconscious brilliance. That's something from the when I was going through your intro that kind of really piqued my interest into this. So, what is actually happening in the brain when someone taps into intuition? Because mostly we connect with intuition like with heart or gut. My gut feeling is this, my gut feeling is that. Is there a science to this, or is it just a pattern recognition or past events you know playing together?
Such a great question. And let me answer that by taking you a little bit back in time when I founded the Genius Lab. And I had this real interest to understand how the best in the world do what they do and to deconstruct brilliance and reverse engineer it because I thought there's got to be a way, there's got to be patterns to this. And so I built a Genius Lab and deconstructed how the best do what they do. And what I discovered was very fascinating and very counterintuitive to how people think about genius and, in particular, where ideas come from. And so, what happens when you talk about the subconscious is that when we get really good at things, we get really fast at it. And often, what happens is about 20 or 50 steps happen in our mind literally that fast. And so, in my Genius Lab, we take that split second and unpack it into what is 20 to 50 steps. In the process of doing that, what I discovered was where ideas come from. And
Okay.
people think that genius is about intellect and the mind, and that just smart people have these great ideas. But here is the actual truth of it: ideas live in the quantum field, meaning that we all exist in this larger field of infinite possibilities, infinite outcomes, infinite ideas. All of it is available. Now, we don't think about that because we're just kind of running our little life, doing our thing, and going to the grocery
Yeah.
store. But we don't think that we're living in this sort of soup of infinite possibilities, but we actually are. And what happens is that through our intention, meaning we want some kind of outcome, or we want to have an idea, or we want to have a breakthrough, just kind of those are things that we're like, oh man, I need a good idea to solve this thing. That's our intention. And then what happens is we allow our mind to kind of wander into the quantum field and receive that idea. So it's not our mind coming up with it, it's our mind receiving what's already available to us. And that's why you often get really great ideas when you're not thinking at all. You're driving, you're in the shower, you're laying out at the
Mhm.
beach, whatever, you're not thinking. And that's when our mind isn't active. So we can
Mhm.
receive something in that is a really brilliant idea or something we need to solve a problem or advance us on our journey in some way. And it's
Mhm.
really why the best in the world have a very specific strategy for how they kind of what they say kind of go blank or go into a zone place or a non-thinking place. And these are all words that people in my Genius Lab have used. And
Okay.
it's the place they deliberately go to kind of empty their mind to receive ideas. So it's a very different way of thinking about genius than most people are accustomed to thinking, but that's actually how it works.
Mm. So it's like, you just clear the clutter, um, make it like a blank space, or just like, the space, the outer space we talk about, and let it flow, like let it be at its flow. Let it give the comfort, and then the ideas will flow. And I also want to, it comes to my mind that, sometimes when we do any particular activity or task repeatedly, um for example, in sales, or when we are connecting with people, when we have done this for many number of years, we kind of get that intuition or that gut feeling, oh my god, okay, this particular person is going to say this, say that. We try to identify the patterns as well. So is does this also connect with our experiences, or the consistency of the work we are doing? I mean, something like that.
Yeah. So the way I think about intuition is in some ways uh, there's sort of two parts to it. And the first part is experience. When you have had enough sales calls or enough experience doing something, you start to notice patterns and you notice them very subtly and you can read them very quickly. So it
Mhm.
looks like intuition. And so maybe you're in the sales and you're like, "Oh, that person's gonna buy and that person's not." Well, how did you know? What were was it just like you pulled that out of the quantum field, or you're just reading enough clues subconsciously to know
Mhm.
their body language, the way they looked, what they said, how they stuttered over a word. So there's sometimes intuition comes from repeated experience and pattern recognition. And so it looks like intuition because it's very fast in the mind. A decision is very fast in the mind.
Mhm.
Sometimes intuition comes from literally, like, downloading information from the quantum field. Like, I'll give you an example. Like, you can just kinda read energy. Like, sometimes you go, "Oh, that's gonna be a bad person." Or
Yes.
this happens to me in the movie theater a lot. I'll be sitting next to someone and I'm like, "Ugh, I don't wanna sit next to this person. I don't like their energy." And I just intuitively know to get up and go. It's not like I thought that I didn't like their energy. It was more just like a quick decision I made to get up and leave and go move to another seat.
Mhm.
So, it's like intuition is pattern recognition, but it's also feeling things and feeling what's right or what's good or what action to take. My sister is very intuitive about cooking. And what I discovered that she does with her intuition is that she actually imagines that she is the food inside of the oven and she knows when it's done or not. Is it
Oh.
intuition? Do you know what I mean? Is she looking for things? But what I realized with her is she's actually imagining she's the food, stepping into the food, feeling, am I done or not? And then deciding if she's going to take it out of the oven or not. It looks like
Mhm.
intuition, but there's actually a strategy that she's using to get that information. So we use these strategies to get information and it looks like intuition, but sometimes it's just really good strategy. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And such a good example you gave. Such a good example, because um we see this, so commonly around us. I have tried to master that art, but I have failed at that. So that's why it really hits home with me. And
But
and
but on that point though, intuition is something that we hone over time. So I might say, are you bad at it or are you just practicing to get better? Because it took me a long time to develop my intuition to be able to see someone's genius. And that is a very interesting process I go through to really look at someone in the eye and say, what is it that your sole gift is at the highest level of your genius? And if I look at somebody long enough, it will drop in. And what's happening, I actually haven't gone through the Genius Lab myself to unpack it, but that took me years to develop that. Like I had a gift for it, but then I had to hone the gift, and I wasn't always right. I made mistakes. And over time, it got better. So that's just the process.
definitely, it's a blend of both the worlds together. And then during your work with high level leaders, and they have to take real time decisions. Sometimes, uh, split second decisions as well. How do they use intuition in such scenarios without second guessing or overanalyzing, overthinking themselves?
Well, there's a couple ways I'd answer that, which is there's not always a one size fits all. Sometimes somebody just has a gut feel. And usually, though, that gut feel is the result of decades of experience or
Mhm.
years of experience. And
Mhm.
sometimes it's just a whim of like, man, I should just go do that. And the idea just pops into their head and they go do it. More often than not, experience is what will cause a gut feel. And what I've discovered in my Genius Lab is that there's patterns of genius. So when people get good at what they do and they need to make difficult decisions, they're running a lot of scenarios in their mind very quickly, and they're
Mhm.
using years of experience that they have honed to streamline their decision making. So it looks like a split decision and it is, but in their mind was probably 40 or 50 things they did and analyzed very quickly to make that decision. And this is what we uncover in my Genius Lab because again, it looks like a split second decision, but there's a lot going on. You can unpack that split second into a lot of steps. And so, I always talk about the strategies of genius. It's things like, well, what are they optimizing for? What are their mental checklists? Meaning, usually when people get really good, they're running these checklists of analytics. Like, does it cover this? Does it that? Is it the other thing? And that happens very quickly. So it looks like a quick decision, but it was actually just a checklist that was very streamlined that they ran through and they're like, oh, that. Um, there's all these things, or maybe they imagine they used a different point of view and they imagined they were somebody or something else, and they use that information to make a split second decision. But it's these strategies of genius that people use based on experience to allow them to make quick decisions. And that's more often than not what's going on. So sometimes it's like, and that's what causes a gut feel. Sometimes it's like really inspired, pulled from the quantum, but more often than not, those kinds of decisions come from just great strategy.
Hmm. Hmm. And how does the data come into picture here? Because uh, specifically in workplaces, we always say that data gives you the picture, data analysis, data statistics. Uh, uh, then sometimes there are situations where your intuition, your gut feeling says something different, but the data is completely opposite to that. So in these scenarios, how leaders, how have you seen leaders managing such scenarios?
That is a simple question with a somewhat complex answer. Um, what I would say more often than not in my experience is that data is useful for leaders and for people performing at really top levels, but it's not the only thing. And there is some evaluation of, is this the data I need to be looking at? I think when I see leaders struggle is they're over relying on data and they're not creating the experience they want. Let me just give you an example. So,
Mhm.
and when I work with top leaders or CEOs, sometimes they are trying to figure out how to make their company better and their employees happier. So they send out employee surveys. And the employee surveys come back and it says, I want you to do this and this doesn't go right and I don't like that. And it's just all of this like griping and grumping around, right? Now, if the leader was going to take all of that data and take action on it, that would be a natural response.
Yeah.
But often the more powerful thing to do is sometimes ignore that and create something that is really going to move the needle for the company and create excitement. So, are you solving a problem to make employees happy, or are you creating excitement where inside that excitement, employees are happy just because they're excited? So sometimes you can look at data, but you're making kind of the wrong strategic decision by addressing that data. Where a more powerful approach is creating a completely different environment that the data might not indicate is needed. Does that make sense?
It does. It does. So it does it mean like, just giving a reactive or getting a reactive approach just based on the what data says won't be a suitable, approach rather than, I think, leaders, they should stress on creating something new that will completely, kind of turn around the pace. Like, I just wanted to understand whether I understood it correctly or not.
Right. And that's why I said it's a simple question with a complex answer. So sometimes the question is this the data I need to be looking at? Or is it just a data point? And I really what I'm going to do is like take that in, but go make a very different decision that's more strategic. Sometimes the data is absolutely critical because it informs a change that you need to make or a direction you need to go. And
Mhm.
so a good example of that is if you've got 50 customers complaining about the same product in the software, well, I'd probably listen to that data if that's something you want to fix, right?
Okay.
So I think it's about being thoughtful of what's the problem I'm actually trying to solve that's going to move the needle and where is data useful and where do I just need to like either ignore it or take it as one data point and actually create something more strategic. And that's
Mm.
kind of case by case. And so data can be incredibly useful. It can also be incredibly distracting. It just kind of depending on what you're trying to do. I think there is an over reliance on data though, oftentimes.
Mm. Understood. That absolutely makes sense. Absolutely makes sense. When as we mentioned about data, and you mentioned in the beginning of the conversation that you blend quantum concepts with coaching. So, in plain terms, in the layman language, how does someone access that quantum field? If let's say, as a podcaster, as someone who is, uh, trying to make something of their own, if they would like to access the quantum field, how can they apply that in a launching product, or maybe pivoting a brand, or scaling or growing a business?
What I've discovered in really top performers and top leaders and top founders is that they are very intentional about not filling their calendar so full that they don't have time to kind of go blank and think. And so this is the counterintuitive thing. Go on more vacations, take longer showers, go on a drive when you're stressed out. It's really about taking time away from the problem when your mind is really active to allow yourself to receive answers and solutions. And so when someone is trying to get a business going, it can be really busy and really stressful and it's a lot of hours. But what I would say is that the more you can kind of be present and realize, like, I'm stuck, I need to get up and go for a walk, or I don't have an answer, I need to go for a drive, and just allow more relaxed time to receive solutions, that is really a more productive way to go than just hammering, hammering, hammering at a problem sometimes. And so that's that is usually, I mean, Steve Jobs, he was brilliant at this. He whenever he couldn't come up with an answer, he would just get up and go for a walk, and that was really his strategy. He talks about it pretty regularly. He says his best ideas always came from when he was stuck, he got up and went for a walk, and then the answer came to him. So moving is a really great strategy. Walking, moving, working out. And it's not just about fitness, it's about moving the body because the body moves the mind, and you're in a more relaxed state and you're not thinking, so ideas and answers and solutions can come to you. So it's really about scheduling that kind of time in because it will make you ultimately more productive.
Hmm. And I just want to bring a bit of nuance into this. So, uh, what is the difference here between, something, let's say, we are decluttering our mind, we are taking time off to, you know, think, or maybe be more creative towards, strategizing, or towards thinking about a different approach, whether it's for business or anything else. But what is the difference here between inspired genius and distraction disguised as intuition? I mean, how do we know when we are tuning in or tuning out of what actually matters? Because sometimes, especially for founders and leaders, it will be okay, there's a whole lot of mess. I have to put out all the fires. So let me just get away from this, and then I'll come back and see what we can do. Something like this, for example.
Well, I'm kinda going through this in my own business right now, so it's a really fresh example in my mind,
Okay.
which is I have my own business. I have for a very long time, but I'm in this phase where I do a lot of what I love, like a lot of it, and
Mhm.
I'm really blessed that I can, and I'm finding myself doing a lot of what I don't love. And so genius, the foundational principle of genius is passion and excitement and joy. That is really where genius is birthed. And so the more we're in our passion, our excitement, and our joy, the more flow there is, the better ideas there are, the more magic happens, the more great synchronicity. When
Mm.
that's only a very small percentage of our day and the rest of it is doing crap we don't want to do, and we're out of that passion and joy, it feels like a slog and our energy lowers and less magic happens. And so I just can really relate to this because I'm finding that the ratio of my excitement to slog is a little out of whack right now. And I'm just thinking, how am I going to change this? And it's like, okay, Taryn, just make a list of all the things that you really just don't love that somebody else could do. And founders don't always have the budget, but usually you can find somebody to help you for a trade or for really affordable or on Fiverr or Upwork or somewhere that you can get and they can help you with the things you don't like doing, drafting the emails, posting the social media, writing the report, whatever, doing the research on this thing, coming up with a customer call list, like whatever the thing is. There's usually a way to outsource those parts. And if you need to be creative financially, then you get creative financially to do it. But when you're doing more of your joy and more of your passion,
Mhm.
magical things tend to happen more, and so staying in that energy really is the most important thing for any founder in my experience, myself included, and just realizing that you don't have to do everything that we think we have to do, and I'm trying to train my own brain on this, like, "Taryn, you don't have to do all of this, just do the parts you like, and great things are gonna happen, you don't need to stress yourself out every day." I think we believe that we need to do more than we actually do.
Hmm. Yeah, this is something on the lines of, I believe trusting the process or do everything from your own end and then just let it be on the universe.
There is
That's
something
it.
to that. I'll never forget somebody said this once, and I use this strategy all the time when I've got something really hard that comes my way. I literally
Mhm.
just have this like mental checklist, a to-do list that I have assigned to the universe. It's like this little list I keep up in the corner of my mind. And I was like, okay, universe, this one's yours. You take this to do and you figure this out and you let me know when you figured it out. And so I assign really hard to dos to the universe. I'm like, you figured out. And the
Mm.
universe always does, and then the answer comes to me in the shower or when I'm driving. So there is really something to that. I think, my sense too is that for the people listening on this call, it's like it's just really easy to try to follow somebody else's blueprint for success. And there's everybody trying to sell their magic formula. Oh, if you just take my strategy for YouTube, you'll grow. If you just take my social media strategy, you'll grow. If you just do my sales strategy, you'll grow. Here's the God's honest truth. Any one of those could work, but the better question is, what do I want to do? What would actually be fun and exciting and interesting for me? And then let me go do that and let me just work that channel enough until I see results. And so while other people's insight can be very helpful and help us on our journey, I think we just have to be really mindful of, yeah, but is that what we want to do? Does that bring us joy? Because if it doesn't, it will feel like a slog. Our vibration lowers and less magic happens. When we can find something that is aligned and exciting and more of our joy and our passion, then that creates more energy for us to do more. So I would just say, just be careful of whose blueprint you're following. Is it someone else's or is it your own? And how do you just kind of listen to your inner voice and say, you know what, I forget the conventional wisdom. I'm going to go do this because I just believe that this is the highest excitement that I could go do and the highest vibration that makes sense for me. And just to give you a very personal example, I've really been thinking about social media lately because I do post on social media, but it really doesn't bring me joy. I like making long form YouTube videos. I like my newsletter. I enjoy those longer form. I like podcasts. Like these are things that I enjoy. I like working with people one on one. I don't really enjoy making 30 to 60-second TikToks. And it's like, okay, yeah, but everybody says you need to be on social media. Well, do you? So again, I'm kind of just going through this myself of like, yeah, but I don't really enjoy it. And it's taking a lot of time and it's not what I want to do. And it's making me feel stressed out. So what if I just got rid of it? And it feels scary to get rid of it. But what if there's way more magic by getting rid of it and focusing on things that actually do bring me joy? Because I can be successful there. So,
Mhm.
these are all the kind of decisions that I think founders and leaders have to make, which is like, you've only got so much energy. Where do you put your joy?
Yeah, that's legit. That's legit. And trust me, Taryn, I am so I mean, multiple number of times I've been in that particular situation, thinking about should I be super active on social media or should I be like posting short videos or not? Sometimes, my inner critic, it says, my goodness, you're just getting old. It's your generational thing. You have to do it. You have to get updated with the newer times. But then, once again, my inner self, it says, okay, if you do not find joy in doing that, let's just, be a little away from that. Let's just do something that you love to do or you find joy in that. So I absolutely connect with you on that.
Yeah, and then there's the fear of, yeah, but if I don't, then I'm not gonna get all these good things. Well, what if we got even better things by not doing it? And
Yeah,
that's just really, I think, the struggle, especially in this day and age when there's so much advice out there for if you just follow my blueprint, then you'll be successful. Well, it worked for them because it was their joy. If it's not yours, it's not gonna work for you.
exactly. Exactly. Brilliant. And Tareen, before we wrap up, I know time is constrained, but I think this just definitely once again makes it more deeper. Um, how do we separate intuition from old mental habits? Especially in founders and entrepreneurs, we see a lot of self-limiting belief in their sometimes imposter syndrome in leaders. So how do we separate intuition from old mental habits that limit innovation instead of expanding it?
Beliefs are really a passion of mine because I think that we've got both positive and empowering beliefs and what you might call more disempowering or limiting beliefs. And a belief is something that's like code in a computer. It can be rewritten. Sometimes it feels impossible to do it, but it's not. That's just the belief trying to keep itself stuck to you by saying it's impossible. And this is a really rich topic. Maybe we'll do it on a podcast for another time, which is how do you rewire these beliefs? And sometimes they really do get in the way, but the most powerful thing I can offer is to do those deep inquiries because what happens when you're doing what you love is it raises your vibration and you get more excited and more in the light, and that shines a light on more of the shadow aspects or limiting aspects of our being. And so the more it's sort of a funny thing, the more happy and joyful and in the light we are, the more it kind of brings up the opposite of that within us that's waiting to be transformed. And so with those limiting beliefs, the deep inquiry is what do I believe to be true? And is that actually true? And that's just like an inner belief. Like if you've coming up with an emotion of, let's say, fear or anger or defeat, whatever these emotions are that aren't really the favorite emotions, then you ask yourself, what would I have to believe to be true about myself to create this emotion? So let's say your emotion is you feel like you just can't do it. Like I can't do it. Like it's kind of this feeling of defeat. What would I have to believe to be true about myself in order to feel this sense of defeat or limitation? And when you can get really quiet, this is where intuition comes in. When you can get really quiet, you can hear the answer. Your soul will whisper the answer to you about a belief. And then when you kind of shine a light on that belief, you realize that it's absurd and it's not really true. But this is an inner inquiry. And what would I have to believe to be true about myself in order to feel this negative emotion? And then you use your intuition to hear the answer. And then you ask yourself, yeah, but is that true? And that process will often really start to clear a limiting belief because you're shining a light on something that's not true. And once your mind realizes it doesn't make sense and it's not true, it will go away. Sometimes beliefs are really deep and they're really stubborn and they like to stick with us. And so it can take a little more work, but that's a conversation for another time because there's tools and tricks you can use for that. But that's really how to do it. And then to answer your question about intuition, intuition is available to us all the time. We're always using our intuition. And whether we have limiting beliefs or not, sometimes what happens is that our limiting beliefs causes us to see reality in a way that's not in our highest best good. And so the more we clear out these limiting beliefs, the clearer we are to see the truth and to get clearer downloads. But honestly, we can use intuition at any state and to get better answers and to trust our knowing and our gut, kind of regardless of where we're at on the journey. So you don't necessarily need to clear all of that. But what I will say is when you do, you tend to be more intuitive because you're not filtering through these lenses that are distorted.
Mm, I agree. I agree. That's quite a distinction. And um, uh, Terry, if our listeners they would like to connect with you, explore more about your work at the Genius Lab, and also listen to your podcast, what would be the best way?
The best way is to connect with me on my Substack newsletter. It is such a fun newsletter filled with so many fun genius tips and insights and motivation. So you can find me at Taryn Voget at Substack. So tarynvoget.substack.com. And there you can access my podcast and my services and my website and my newsletter. But really, the newsletter is such a great place to connect with me because I respond to comments, anyone who has a comment.
Mm,
And there's really fun insights that will help anybody on their journey, especially leaders and founders.
Brilliant. I'll make sure to mention all the links in the show notes for our listeners. And Tareen, thank you. Thank you so much because you are challenging us to redefine genius, redefine intuition, not as something we chase, but something we remember. So, thank you so, so much for the work you are doing.
Oh, thank you for having me. I really enjoyed this conversation.
Definitely. Definitely. And to all the listeners out there, whether you lead a team or you just started a solo venture, today's conversation is a reminder that strategy doesn't always come from spreadsheets. Sometimes the smartest move starts with silence, peace, stillness, and tuning into what's already within you. So, if today's conversation sparked something within you, hit follow, drop a review, and share this with someone who's overdue for a breakthrough. And don't forget to connect with Tareen and follow her on Substack. Check out all her resources and her podcast. Just refer to the show notes along with this episode. Until next time, stay curious, stay grounded, and keep blending strategy with soul right here on BizBlend. Thank you.